Hello, welcome to another tonalist landscape oil painting demonstration. This is your painter in residence, M. Francis McCarthy, and welcome as well to the Mastering George Inness series, day 4. I believe it's day 4. And the painting that I am presenting you today is a study after George Inness's An Autumn Afternoon. I did it as an 8 by 12. But I can tell you the size of his because I found some information. It was a 30 by 45 inch painting that he did in 1891. Yes, peak Inness. This painting isn't, as massively extraordinary as some of his, but still it's very nice, very good. And I believe I did do a study after this in the 100 Days of Tonalism. I'm not absolutely certain about that, but I remember removing some figures. And just so you know, there's going to be a very high-res version of this reference on the corresponding blog, which you can access below this post. So if you're one of the folks trying to master an S, I am making my reference materials available to you. And actually, in this case, this image I just found is way more high res than what I built my painting off of. And yeah. So, but that gets into some things. There was some challenges doing this painting. I'm working on a board that's been textured with some black gesso. If you're a member of my channel, you can find that in the members area. There's a whole tutorial on my process. Part of my process is to do the black gesso, and then I go over with oil paint and a brush. In this case was mostly yellow ochre with a little bit of raw umber, maybe a little bit of burnt sienna as well, just to get the right kind of tone. Raw raw sienna would have been very close to the right tone, but I don't believe I had a big enough tube in the studio at that time to make the preparation. What I do is just mix a big pile of oil paint and then add a little bit of my normal painting oil to it, and I go over that board with a brush, not a huge brush either, and try and keep my strokes sort of interesting and kind of multi-dimensional. And the overall effect is that I'm going for is like what you might have if you were working over a painting, working over either someone else's painting or one of your felt paintings. I got into this process because I always enjoyed painting on top of my failed paintings, but I really don't like making failed paintings to paint on top of. So that's how I arrived at this process, and I get pretty involved with that in the tutorial video there. But I've kind of given you the some parameters. Anyway, that is great on one hand because it kind of sets up. You're going to have softer edges built in. You're going to have interesting brush fracture built in. However, you have to make an effort to get the paint into all the little nooks and crannies, so that definitely changes how you paint. Um, and also, like, it's not that great for like little fiddly details and things, and so some of that just had to go by the wayside, and that's okay because that's the other point. I make little mental points I want to communicate to you. Just assuming maybe you're interested in doing studies yourself of the masters and getting better. And honestly, there is no better way to get better. No, it doesn't have to be a nest. It could be whoever your favorite artist is, or don't just do one artist. I've done lots of different artists, but honestly, I don't think even at the end of this 130 paintings, I've already done 100 Inness studies in my painting career. I'm pretty sure, maybe close to that number. And I don't paint like Inness. I wouldn't mind painting more like Inness, though, which is one of the points of the series. Getting to my larger point, though, if you're going after these studies, don't get too hung up on little fiddly stuff. I mean, try and get things in the right spot. Try and get things the right color. Try and get your brush fracture and the way your brush strokes look sort of similar, but do not, and I repeat, do not try and match them stroke for stroke. And if you're working much smaller, like I have scaled his painting down from 30 by 45 inches down to 8 by 12. That's really massive. I am putting the figures in, but my figures are not going to be, there's not enough room there for me to get too busy with that, especially doing them on the top of the texture. So I just treated them like I would treat any other part of the landscape. I didn't get real tweaky, and that's one of the things that Inness did very, very well, especially we consider that he was painting so large, is that his figures are quite abstract, they're quite organic, and they're not extra delineated, and it would have been easy for him to do that working at 30 by 45 inches. But they're not like that. So I'm going to try now. It might just be the reference that I used. I just went to this museum. I am going to read you a little bit of what they had to say, and then in a minute I'm going to read you. We're going to pick up the book on American tonalism, the chapter on Inness. So it just won't be me burbling through this whole thing, but let's go. Let's go have a look here. So it's at the Clark Museum. Don't know where that is. Williamstown, MA. Hmm. And beautiful. They let you download it. It's a very, very large image. So um, definitely well worth having a look at. You can get right in there. But kind of a good thing I didn't have that, because a lot of times I zoom out anyway, just because I don't get hung up on things. I just want to get her done, get her done. Um, and this was a bit of a challenge, looking at the just between the texture and the other things going on. Anyway, let's read what the Clark had to say about it real quick. It just says a horizontal line of trees separates the hazy background from the foreground, where a woman and child gather firewood. Delicate touches of color suggest the season, while the soft, misty atmosphere gives the image a sense of stillness and peace. I love that. I love that feeling of stillness and peace. And I hit a lot of his shapes. I'm really, the thing I want to really try and absorb is the way he divides the picture plane. You know, that's the thing. I'd like to internalize that, and I definitely will more so at the end of the series than I am currently in my own stuff. Yeah. So let's read a little bit from this book. We're halfway at the point of the video, and all the semi-interested people have dropped out. So this is just for you, interested person. Just for you. I want to move this bookmark, but it seems very well. Oh, we go. All right, we're on page 41. We'll just start with this top paragraph in the middle of it. The Hudson River School artist dominated the New York art world throughout the early part of his career. It was Inness's synthetic style of post-Barbizon landscape that of his followers, both indigenous and foreign trained, that ultimately triumphed and sidelined the Hudson River guys, which is Frederick Edwin Church and his contemporaries. In a sense, Inness was always a tonalist. After being first intrigued by old master chiaroscuro and Titian's golden tonalities, and then he moved on to his own brand of hybrid Barbizon naturalism, infused with soft painterly tones, and finally to his distinctive late style of synthetic expressive tonalism. Oh, David, you write so great. I know you won't hear this, but he's just a great writer, which relied on painstakingly composed middle-toned harmonies for the spiritual unity he sought. Oh, that's a great point, David. Yeah, I mean, the writer, David. Yeah, so let's just talk about that, and then we'll get back into the book. So that middle space, right? That is what Inness is about. And one of the things that distinguishes this painting is that I went nowhere even close to black on any of the dark colors. So, and I address this in the members area, which there's a link for under the video, which has the full live session, about 3 hours. But you're there with me in the struggle, you know, in the weeds. I'm definitely trying to give you guys some insight into that here, so you know, don't feel like you're not getting value just by being a subscriber, because you are, because there's good tips here too. So this middle space, right? If you were to break the painting into a series of values on a scale of say 10 values, there would be nothing at the darkest end because he didn't go anywhere near black. And at the lightest end, he fell well short of the brightest. Oh, I take that back. Her cap is painted nearly 100% titanium, and the sweater or garment of the Lady Gathering Wood is a very bright yellow. But those are very tiny bits of the painting. Overall, the value scale goes nowhere near that. And I have to also say that house in the back is quite bright. But there's touches of brightness, um, which are brilliant. They make the painting come alive. Like right now, it's a little dull. When you start getting those touches in, the little buildings he throws in the very hazy distance, and then of course her cap and her sweater. It all adds up to brilliant. But everything else is existing in this broad middle area where there's no extreme highlights and no extreme darks. Now, a lot of tonalism, just most tonalism, will avoid extreme highlights, except for like little tiny touches or glints of things. Back. My wife cut herself in the kitchen there. Not a serious cut, little cut. Um, yeah. Anyway, that's definitely great insight from David. Let's move on though. Middle toned harmonies. Think about that. Spiritual unity. Think about that. To carry on, as early as 1884, Inness had been described by a critic as a tonalist, although in a wider sense he was often thought of as a colorist, aligned with Lafarge and Hunt in his emphasis on composing with color as opposed to line and form. Inness was never satisfied merely to record the relevant facts of a scene before him. He preferred to pick and choose motifs, the forms of landscape ever at his fingertips. That's another thing. That's one of the reasons his late period stuff is great. He had completely synthesized landscape after having painted it for 30 or 40 years. Maybe not completely, but he had a repertoire at his fingertips. You know, he had a way of approaching trees, hills, mountains, paths. He didn't do a lot of paths, interestingly. At least not later on. Let's see. Filter, rearrange, and synthesize. Thus achieving in paint the tremulous approximation of the idea or emotion he wished to communicate. By late in his life, Inness, though never completely abandoning the invigorating experience of plein air painting, was working almost entirely out of memory in the studio. Harmonious and unifying tone and unity of effect was something he constantly struggled to obtain, with, as he noted, just enough detail or contrast to keep his canvases interesting. For Inness, the key to success was the direct channeling onto canvas of the artist's controlling passion. This expressive fervor reached a crescendo in his late work as a result of his readiness to arrange and edit his landscape elements at will, a reductive strategy that only increased the ultimate carrying power of the picture. He composed as much with ideas and memory as with his eye, which is to say that his eye was informed by a subjective power that sought translation in the visible world. Let's see how far we can get here. It's very dense, but amazingly well written. Or, as Emerson observed, the sensual man conforms thoughts to things, the poet conforms things to his thoughts. The one esteems nature as rooted and vast, the other as fluid and impresses his being thereon. To him, the refractory world is docile and flexible. No idea what that word means. I just read it. He invests dust and stones with humanity. That's great stuff. Oh, now here we're slowing way down. That's 3 times the speed. Yeah, I ended up, so I had to do this in 2 sessions, and the great thing about the texture is I don't have as much of a problem with that colors going matte. So I really tried to get it all done in one day. It was just little things like fiddling with this, that lady, and other little aspects, and getting a sort of a texture that approximated his, which honestly would have probably been easier to do on a smooth board, like the previous painting I did. But it's all good. We're doing some on texture and some on smooth, and the end result is that I don't get too tweaky, just like I do not do the sin I'm advising you not to do. Just get your study done. Take as long as you need, but don't take too much time. Don't be trying to make a copy. You're making a study. You're riffing. You're doing a cover song. The way I see it, Inness wrote a piece of music and I'm playing it. That's my approach. And hopefully you're getting that and you're getting something from it and you enjoyed this video. If you got this far, we got to assume you did. And leave me a comment if you did. I really appreciate that. This painting will be for sale in my store, as all of these are, $2.99. And I'm turning it sideways to get a better photo for you. Until I come back with another video for your enjoyment, which will be soon, please do me a favor, do me a solid. Take good care of yourself, your family, all your loved ones. Um, Stay out of trouble, and God bless you and your family.